They laughed at the fresh cadet. Minutes later, she entered as the commanding officer.
They thought she didn't belong there. The briefing hall buzzed with noise. Boots scraping the floor, chairs shifting, low laughter bouncing off concrete walls. Fresh cadets filled the room, newly arrived, uniforms stiff, confidence loud and unearned. This was their first major orientation, their first taste of military life beyond the gate. And then there was her. She stood near the back of the room, alone. No rank visible, no name tag catching attention. Her uniform looked plain compared to the others, slightly worn, almost understated. To most eyes, she looked like a mistake, someone who had wandered into the wrong place. A cadet nudged another and smirked. "Who's that? New intake? Looks lost." The whispers turned into quiet laughter. One cadet, bolder than the rest, leaned back in his chair and spoke just loud enough to be heard. "Fresh cadet, huh? First day nerves already?" A few others chuckled. She didn't react, didn't look their way, didn't shift her stance. She simply waited. The cadets mistook her silence for fear. They always did. Confidence without noise confused them. Another cadet whispered, "She doesn't even know where to sit." More laughter. What they didn't notice was the way senior NCOs at the side of the room had gone silent, how their posture straightened, how conversations stopped the moment she entered. Because they recognized her. The door at the front of the hall opened slightly as an aide stepped inside. He scanned the room, eyes moving past the cadets and landing directly on her. He nodded, respectfully. That alone should have been a warning. The cadets were too busy laughing. "She'll learn quick," someone muttered. "This place eats people alive." The lights dimmed slightly as the room prepared for the commanding officer's arrival. Chairs scraped. Cadets hurried to attention. She took one calm step forward, then another. Still, no one noticed. Not yet. The aide's voice finally broke through the noise. "All personnel." He paused, then spoke clearly. "Stand by for the commanding officer." Every cadet snapped upright, boots aligned, spines straightened, eyes forward. And in the sudden silence, she continued walking toward the front. The room locked into silence. Every cadet stood frozen at attention, eyes fixed forward, waiting for the commanding officer to enter from the front door. But the door didn't open. Instead, footsteps echoed from behind them. Slow, measured, unhurried. Confusion rippled through the ranks. One cadet flicked his eyes sideways, just for a second, and his breath caught in his throat. She was moving. The same fresh cadet they had laughed at moments earlier was walking down the center aisle, her posture flawless. The room seemed to part instinctively, as if the air itself recognized authority before the mind could catch up. The whispers died instantly. Smirks vanished. Faces tightened. Spines stiffened even more. An NCO at the front of the hall snapped to attention so sharply his heels cracked against the floor. That sound echoed like a warning shot. She stopped at the front of the hall, turned, and faced them. Her expression was calm, not angry, not offended, just observant. She let the silence stretch, long enough for discomfort to settle in, long enough for memory to replay laughter they wished they could take back. Finally, the aide stepped forward and spoke, voice clear and formal. "Attention on deck." Every cadet felt their stomach drop, because no one said that unless the highest authority in the room had arrived. She took one final step forward. "I'll take it from here," she said. Her voice was steady, controlled, and unmistakably commanding. The cadets' eyes widened. Recognition hit them all at once, a delayed explosion of understanding. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a test. This was the commanding officer, the same woman they had mocked, the same woman they had dismissed. the same woman they had laughed at. A cadet in the front row swallowed hard as realization crashed over him. Another clenched his jaw, heat rushing to his face. No one dared move. She scanned the room slowly, deliberately, meeting eyes without flinching. "I heard some of you had questions about belonging," she said calmly. No one breathed. "About who looks like they fit and who doesn't." Her gaze paused, just briefly, on the cadets who had laughed the loudest. And about what inexperience looks like. The silence was unbearable now, because they all knew. The lesson hadn't even begun yet, and they were already failing it.
She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Authority filled the room the way pressure fills deep water, slowly, completely, with no escape. She paced once across the front of the hall, hands clasped behind her back, eyes scanning the ranks of cadets who now stood rigid and silent. "Some of you arrived here today believing confidence means volume," she said evenly. "Believing respect is something you take." No one moved. "Others," she continued, "believed rank is something you wear, not something you carry." A bead of sweat rolled down one cadet's temple. Another stared straight ahead, afraid even to blink. She stopped walking, directly in front of the cadet who had laughed the loudest. She didn't call him out by name. That was worse. "When you laughed earlier," she said calmly, "you weren't laughing at a person." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "You were laughing at discipline." The room felt smaller. 12 weeks, she went on, is all it took for some of you to forget why you're here. She turned back to the formation. "This uniform does not make you superior," she said. "It makes you accountable." Her voice sharpened slightly, just enough for them to feel it. "Every word you speak, every action you take reflects on the service you represent." She paused, then delivered the line that crushed what remained of their arrogance. "I have dismissed officers for less than what I witnessed in this room." The cadets' hearts dropped. This wasn't a lecture, this was a warning. She resumed pacing, slower now. "You want to know what experience looks like?" she asked. "It looks like knowing when to speak and when to stay silent." Her gaze swept the room again. "You want to know what leadership looks like? It looks like respect, especially when no one is watching." She stopped at the podium. "And if any of you still believe this was just an embarrassing misunderstanding," she leaned forward slightly, "then you are about to learn exactly what command responsibility feels like." The hall was dead quiet. They had stopped being cadets for a moment. They were defendants, and the judgment hadn't even been delivered yet. She straightened, her presence filling the hall one last time. "What happens next," she said calmly, "isn't punishment." A few cadets almost exhaled until she continued. "It's correction." She gestured toward the senior instructor standing near the wall. "Effective immediately, this class will restart its leadership evaluation cycle." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the formation. That meant extra drills, extra inspections, longer nights, and reputations reset to 0. "For those of you who laughed," she added, "you will submit written reflections on what you believe leadership means." Her eyes hardened just slightly. "And then you'll prove it, daily." She stepped away from the podium. "But understand this," she said. "Today will follow you longer than any score on the board." She let that sink in. Because careers are not ended by weakness, they're ended by arrogance. The cadets stood unmoving, faces flushed, pride stripped bare. She looked at them now not with anger, but expectation. "Some of you will recover from this," she said. "Some of you will grow." A pause. "And some of you won't." She adjusted her cap, voice steady and final. "That choice is yours." She turned toward the door. Before exiting, she stopped, just once, and spoke without looking back. "Leadership is not announced," she said. "It arrives quietly and stays because it's earned." The door closed behind her. Only then did the room breathe again. No laughter, no whispers, only the weight of a lesson that none of them would ever forget. And from that day forward, whenever a new cadet entered the hall, no one judged too quickly, because they remembered the moment a so-called fresh cadet walked in and left as their commanding officer.